Welcome everyone on this post-budget discussion on retail infra on the key announcements made by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman in today's budget. As we all know, the budget has been announced, has been talked about in keeping in mind the general elections for 2024. We have a set of in-house experts. We have Dave Kachari and we have P. Manoj joining us from Bombay. Together we'll be talking about the major announcements that the finance minister has made in the infrastructure sector. What do they mean and what has been missed? So welcome everyone. Welcome Dev, I will start with you. According to you, which are the key announcements, which are the key thrust areas which you see from the government side in today's budget?
So, if we start from the aviation sector, I think at aviation, the major announcement has been about, 50 additional airports, water aerodromes and heliports and advanced landing grounds. So that was the only specific announcement that Sitharaman made. But within it, like what I think the industry would have looked forward to, as in like what are the plans when it came to, airport privatization? Because 25 airports are in the national monetization pipeline. We do not have sort of any guidance on that. And so let's say 13 were to be sort of new airports which were to be earmarked for privatization. Right now we do not have any clarity as to what is the timeline for those. But within the announcement, I think although what you could definitely see is that what we have an element is of announcement of the advanced landing grounds. So I think given the fact that that is also a bit geopolitical in nature, so I think when it comes to let's say air infrastructure, advanced landing grounds would be something that would be serving the interest of both the civil aviation ministry as well as the defense ministry. So from aviation part of it, you can see that the focus on advanced landing grounds is something that the Sitharaman union budget for 2023 and 24 has outlined.
Okay, and as far as extension of loans for the states is concerned, what is your observation when it comes to that?
So I think this is pretty much what we were actually hearing from the government, at least from DPIIT as well. At least they had indicated, because this particular scheme, which is known as Scheme for Special Assistance to the States for Capital Investment. So this was first sort of started in 2020 and 21, and this scheme has sort of gained traction, because for states getting interest-free loan for a period of 50 years is a much more attractive options. So that definitely has gained traction, and the outlay has also been enhanced to 1.3 lakh crore for FY24, which was in the current financial year it is at 1 lakh crore. Plus, this particular scheme also has a Gati Shakti component. This financial year, the component was about at 5,000 crore. It can be expected, because the notification from the finance ministry will have to come out for the details for this particular scheme. So we can see probably the allocation for the Gati Shakti aligned projects may be enhanced. So that is one thing that the industry can look forward to.
Right. So there is lots for industry to look forward to from the fine print of the budget, if I may say so. Let me bring in Manoj at this point. A lot has been announced by coastal shipping by the finance minister, and since you have been tracking this sector more and know the sector more than anyone else does, how do you view the announcements as far as the ports and shipping sector is concerned? Where has the finance minister gone right, and what all needs to be done?
So basically, the finance minister's announcement on promoting coastal shipping through PPP and viability gap funding is a very good initiative by the government, because this sector has been neglected for a long time. Even though in fits and starts, some steps have been announced in the previous years. But I think, all of them were focused on the land side of it in terms of, building coastal berths dedicated to coastal cargo and, providing incentives for cargo in terms of discount schemes and all that. So this is the first time that they have focused on the floating aspect of it, that is the ships per se. So, and that I think, it's a very capital intensive, activity. So I think, what the government is now trying to do is to focus on that aspect, so that, both public and private authorities can come in and, buy ships and then put it into operation, through a public-private partnership. And, since this is a long gestation and, a highly capital intensive sector, she's trying to tap into the viability gap funding that is already available with the government to build these floating assets. So I think this is the first time that they have tried to they have correctly understood that this is one aspect that has not been taken care of. So that is what has been addressed by the budget.
Right.
And
And
coastal shipping, is a highly energy efficient, low cost, and environmental friendly. Yeah.
and
So I think it's a win-win because a lot of when you in terms of other countries blessed with similar coastline and all that, India's cargo penetration through the coastal mode is hardly about 6 to 7%. So I think we have got a long way to go. We have got a huge coastline, you see, both on the eastern and western. So and that is something that's already available. You don't need to set up infrastructure for that because whatever is already there with the depth and unlike roads and railways, you don't have to invest into laying tracks or building roads. It's all the waterway is already there, so you only need to do the ancillary things like terminals and the floating assets. So terminals and floating assets as well as the pricing has already been taken care of. Now they are focusing on the shipping part of it. That is the core asset. That is what it is. So I think it's a fairly good announcement to make.
right. And right after the budget, did you get the time to speak to any of the industry experts or the corporates which are there in the maritime sector? What are their views? What does this announcement mean like for them?
So they are quite happy with that because all said and done with India's high logistics costs, I mean, in double digits, which we are trying to reduce it to single digits, and this part to be plugged. They think that it will translate into lower logistic costs for the end users if this were to be implemented. In the right letter and spirit that the finance minister has. So now the ball is in the ministry's court, Ministry of Shipping, Ports and Waterways will have to implement a scheme whereby they can put this into action. Viability gap, as much as 20% of a project is available from the center for a project. That's my understanding for to access the VGF funds. So I think the fine prints will have to be now written by the Ministry of Shipping, Ports and Waterways. So I think it will take a couple of months before they can implement a scheme. Yeah. So they are all looking forward to it. That how they are that's how.
Right. Right. And actually, that brings me to an interesting observation from the railways point of view as well. Today, the government has said that this is the highest ever allocation made for the railway sector. While everyone is celebrating that highest ever allocation, there are few experts who have said that it actually came as a shocker because the allocation in the infrastructure space, especially the roads and railways, has been going up for the last couple of years. Why has the government given further boost or so to speak higher investment in this space? I'm really curious to know about what has been the industry review or industry reaction about the announcement in the aviation space, where the finance minister has announced 50 new airports. We don't know the timeline of those airports. What exactly is she talking about? Are they any kind of are they brownfield airports or greenfield is she talking about? If you could tell us more about that, Dave.
So yes, I mean the budget does not detail, the kind of nature these airports would be, whether brownfield or greenfield. But what is anticipated that if we limit it specific to airports, then most likely this would be your, smaller airports who are catering to the Udan flights. So most likely this is where it would be catered to. So, and the point is that I think if we go a bit broad and include the MRO industry into it, I think they probably would be a little bit disappointed, because they were anticipating in terms of some sort of announcement related to tax incentives or other policy measures of MRO. And although it would probably be under the ambit of the GST Council, but inclusion of ETF under GST is also something that the industry was looking forward to. So no mention of those things. So I think on those bit, I think the aviation industry would be a bit disappointed. But we will have to see. The budget is not the only event which sort of goes on to work on policy measures. There will be other events as well coming up.
Yeah, actually similar is the story with the road sector, which actually saw a higher allocation from the as compared to the railways in last year's budget. This year, there was actually no mention of road transport or new highway projects, etc. And another issue, another topic that was missing from the infrastructure space was the subject of monetization. Monetization was one theme which has been prevalent in the previous budgets and previous press conferences, major press conferences by the finance minister, where the government has talked about monetization in the fields of roads, railways, aviation, other infrastructure related sectors. So it was completely missing in today's budget. What do you have to say about that, Manoj? And is monetization no longer a priority area for the government, or is the budget is strictly focused on elections 2024, and hence monetization can take a backseat?
Since there was an announcement last year, and some of these projects are already, coming to a fruition stage in terms of execution and implementation. So some of them have already, in the process of being monetized, some of these projects. So that's a continuous pipeline of projects that's happening. So I think, the government must have thought that, okay, let it continue. And, since there is nothing they could have achieved by, announcing this, because that is part of a big project that was announced a couple of years back. So I think they'll let it continue, and they'll take it forward whatever has been announced. So rather than every time saying the same thing, so I think
Right. So
this will continue.
basically,
This will continue. These things will continue. Yeah, even though it's not been mentioned in the speech and in any of the documents, but that's part of the capital raising exercise, so that they can plow it back to new projects and all that, right? So they don't have a choice with that. With the kind of schemes that's been announced, and with the capital outlay of 33% and all that, some of these will come from the existing projects only, by recycling existing capital, by existing these things exiting.
Right. That's right, Manoj. They Similar is the case with aviation as far as monetization is concerned. Even though the theme was missing in today's budget speech, the focus remains the same.
Yeah, I mean, yes, the NMP for the, as I said earlier, 25 airports in the line. But, at least what the, the industry or the stakeholders would have at least, and cutting across all the sectors would have at least would have wanted to know is like what has been achieved so far. Because for this current financial year, we had a target of 1.62 lakh crore from asset monetization. Now, yesterday's economic survey also did not detail how much of that has been achieved. Even in today's budget, the finance minister did not really reveal much details. So, although it would be an ongoing process, but it gives a little bit of sort of understanding and applying to the industry as much how much of that monetization process is actually succeeding. Because the theme of the whole the infrastructure development of this government has been that you will create new infrastructure through monetization, as in like asset creation through monetization. That was the principle and the theme. So a little bit of details as to where we are currently would have been helpful. But Manoj sir said that this would be an ongoing process, and we'll only get to know how the thing progresses in the coming years. I think that also remains valid.
Right. So for me, I think the biggest takeaway from the budget, the top three takeaways from the budget would be a higher allocation for railways, which means that the government is completely and truly focused on infrastructure development. Government is completely on improve, which is a prime stake as far as the railway sector is concerned. Then, even without talking about the road sector, when the government when the government says that it is talking about infrastructure as a whole, uh, these uh, uh, these subsectors which are part of infrastructure are extremely crucial for the government. And the third would be bringing in states' participation when we are talking about true infrastructure development in the country. So these were my takeaways. What were your takeaways, Manoj? If you have to sum it up in
So
three important
basically
points.
taking off on what you said, you are saying that, okay, budget has made substantial increase in railway outlay. It is understandable because railway has got a lot of interface with the armed army. You understand? I mean, like
Right.
no other sectors, railways has got a huge interface with the electorate. Please understand that. So it is only natural that the government and with the kind of trains that they are putting out on Vande Bharat and various other schemes, it costs huge, right? It costs huge. So I think if they want to continue with this, I mean, I think I think somewhere down the line, I have a feeling that they will set up these Vande Bharat trains. At some point, they will look at monetizing that through PPP.
Interesting. Very
It
interesting.
is quite possible that way. You just look at it like that. They are doing it exactly like this EPC. EPC means what? I mean, in the road sector, after they hit a lot of
Yeah.
problem with the private investors, they decided, okay, we will invest in the. They can. You remember some time back, they had, thought of, inviting private sector for running trains which didn't take off for the reason that
Yes.
there were a lot of
Also, also is also the also the railway station redevelopment by including the private sector, that also did not take off the way it was planned. Yes, yes,
Now
Manoj.
they are thinking of an EPC route for that. So what I'm saying is that here it is the government has realized that okay, we will put in the investment upfront, and then we will execute it, implement it, and take it to an operational stage, and then at 1 or 2 years down the line, we will monetize it because have in fact significantly jacked up the railway outlay. That's my reading of the situation.
Very interesting observation, Manoj. If I have to ask Dev to conclude this discussion with your key takeaways from the budget 2024, what would be those observations?
I think the for infrastructure, I think the budget has definitely given the push for the capital investment and the expenditure outlay. I mean that cannot be doubted. I think that has been the focus. If the budget from the from the outside, if it seems if it is missing any major announcement related to infrastructure, well, actually the previous years have already taken care of that. The Gati Shakti, the whole mission was launched in 2021. We had the national logistics policy come out in last year. So pretty much everything that the infrastructure focus schemes of the government are already sort of in place. Even when you talk to senior officials at the government looking after these projects, one specific thing that they talk about, that now what they are looking forward to is the execution. That the policy framework and the schemes and all of the other things are now in place. The execution of it, how things come together, is what will actually 2023 and 2024 would be all about.
Right, right. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for taking time out for this discussion and discussing the key takeaways from the budget today. We hope the announcements that have been made in the budget actually give the desired results, both to the industry and to the bigger picture, that is employment, the whole idea behind infrastructure development that the government intends to do. So thank you very much for joining this discussion. Thank you for watching YouTube Intra's discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.